So it's not just cats. I do dogs too. So if you want to talk about training your foster, I'm all ears. So I've been reflecting in all the conversations that's been happening over the last 2 days. And all I can think about is everything I wanted to say has already been said. And how do I say something new and not bore you guys to death? But it was also validating for me, right? So I'm sitting over there and I'm thinking, wow, it's not just me that's seeing the same thing. So we as pharma, as an industry, are essentially at the same place in our omni-channel transformation, if we call it, journey, right? We're seeing the same challenges, we're hearing the same pain points. We're also asking the same questions, like, why are we still talking about omni-channel if AI is changing everything? Should we talk about something else, right? And so it was really validating to me. So as we talk about, as we start talking about, like, where are the silos in the HCP ecosystem right now, currently, and where are some innovations that we can put in place, I'd like for you guys to think about this session in 2 terms, right? So what's near term and then what's long term. Most of what I'll talk about is very near term, right? It's happening right now. We're facing it right now. It's omni-channel. How do we do it? But how do we position ourselves so that when we think about all the technology and innovation and AI that's just knocking at our doors, how do we get to that, right? So while I'm talking near term, please think long term for me, and then we'll connect after this. So hello, everyone. Saba Tahseen. I'm an Omnichannel Strategy Associate Director for AstraZeneca's Biopharmaceutical Unit. And I'm here to talk to you about everything you have already heard in the last 2 days. Again, have to do this. Everything I'm saying is my own opinion. Please don't go coming for AstraZeneca for this. I am required to do this by legal. OK, so jumping right into this. HCP Omnichannel ecosystem, right? What we've heard the last couple days, and I'm summarizing it for you guys because that's all in my notes, our HCPs are really inundated by our brand marketing communications, right? They're completely feeling overwhelmed by all the kind of touch points they have, and they're just not feeling like it's a connected experience, right? But we, as pharma marketers, are essentially creating this ecosystem for them. And it's all connected in our mind, right? So we are creating these very beautiful, intrinsic, complicated ecosystems, and we have all these business rules, and we have our strategic imperatives. Everything's lining up to our strategic imperatives. We're measuring at a KPI level. All our KPIs are adding up, right? And sometimes we're measuring our ROI, we're measuring our performance, and everything's showing that we're hitting our goals, we're meeting our targets, everything's great. And then we do things like meet with a KOL, or we have an engagement with an HCP, and we realize they actually are not happy with us. So where is the disconnect? A few months ago, I was at Digital Pharma East, and we were at this panel, and I was listening to these HCPs talk about their experience, and they were just talking about how they feel they're not getting what their need is, right? And I'm sitting over there thinking, but you're the center of our ecosystem. What do you mean you're not getting what you need? We're designing everything around you. But they're over there talking about, well, we want information when we want it, when we need it, the channels that we want it in. We don't want it at the time of when your rep is available to come meet me, or when I can meet your rep. I don't want it in a leave behind that you're leaving with us. So we're actually not really realizing the needs of our customer as best as we think we should. So then, what are the silos? What's creating all of that? And for us, everybody's talked about it, data. All of us here are probably very, very, very aware that data silos exist in an omni-channel ecosystem. Not new, nothing revolutionary, nothing crazy here. But it's not just an idea of we're not looking at data holistically from a channel perspective. In a larger organization, something like the likes of AstraZeneca and a lot of the other companies that have been on the stage and talked about it already, it's also the idea of, are we connecting the right functional data to other functional data? Are the KOL data actually talking to our marketing campaign data? Are SciComms engagements accounted for? Are we talking to our MSLs and medical? Is that a touch point? And the information we're getting, both qualitative and quantitative, all those insights, are they really connected? Market access, all the communications we're sending out to our HCPs, are they connected? And in some cases, I'm sure all pharma companies are in different stages of it. We've all probably worked on some sort of a HCP 360 or customer 360 dashboard that claims to have a lot of that already done, and it's a work in progress. Phase 1, we got this much done. Phase 2, we'll get another 10% done. But we're not really there yet, right? And there's just a lot of different data challenges that exist. So when we think about some of the things that were said in the panel yesterday, that data challenges exist because there's this idea of the channel data are not at the same time. They're coming from different time frames. They're not apples to apples. We're not matching the right things. It'll never be apples to apples because not every engagement is an apple, right? So how do we get more creative about thinking about this data connection and actually do it? And some of the opportunities here, right, that we have heard from a lot of different services are there is AI, there is technology that's doing that for us. That's near term. But what can we as pharma do to get ourselves ready to embrace that now so we're not falling behind, right? So 2 things. The first one is very, very easy to talk about, but it's essentially that. Connect your functional data. Do not just look at channel level data and get stuck at channels. Start beyond that. Start with what we can do. And then the second thing is a little bit more, less, I guess, technical, less fun, if you will, is are we, as we're bringing in all these AI and technology and innovation to help us do the data stitching, help us create these dashboards, help us get insights, right? Are we upskilling our teams to think of it that way, right? Is our team, everybody that's actually looking at the data, driving the insights, are they ready to use an AI tool and prompt the AI to give them the exact insight that they want? There's a whole lot, we talked about trust today. How are we teaching our teams to do that? Are we teaching our teams to not just prompt the right way, but also to look at the insights that these AI tools or these dashboards are giving us, and how do we make it bigger, better, more actionable for our needs, right? And then lastly, if we get to that point of agentic AI at any point, are we really challenging our teams and upskilling our teams to start thinking about measurement and optimization? Like, what is that measurement strategy that even looks like if agentic AI is doing it at their will, or if the next best action that's being recommended is at the will of something that we haven't really studied or trusted to that point. So a lot to consider, and there's a lot more implications on the long term, but I will leave the data conversation here for now and move on to the next piece, which is channels and functions. Same concept, right? We already talked about why there's silos in the data. So why are there still, that we're all aware of it, so why are there still silos in our channel and function levels? And for this, let's go all the way to talk about our brand planning, right? How we as pharma marketers do brand planning. It's still very much focused around your strategic imperatives, your KPIs, everything ladders up to that. And it's done at a functional level, right? The HCP team does A, the consumer team does B, market access does C, right? It's not integrated. And then you get to our tactical plan, and each function have their own tactical plan that they do at a channel level, but there are no synergies, right? Like, consumer may be using something that HCPs are using, and so is SciComm, so it just continues. So that's what creates the divergence with data and projects and tactics and channels, and it just continues, and it just grows and grows and grows. So when we start thinking about brand planning, can we start, and it's not an innovation, it's more transformation for pharma, because pharma doesn't think that way. So can we start thinking at a CX level or at an omni-channel level and have a more connected brand plan, right? There are teams within our organizations. We have omni-channel team. Hi, I'm from one of them. There's also customer experience teams. But we're given the brand plan after they have been made and asked to make the connections, or we're there at the table with all these other functions and asked to connect them, rather than starting with the connected view and then diverging into each function and how do the KPIs ladder up there. So I think that's an additional, very near term, because I think that's something we need to start doing, because if we're measuring our customer experience, then we will see the difference because the strategy is not set at the customer experience level, right? And I think part of this was already mentioned in some capacity yesterday, that we need to change the DNA of the boardrooms and conversations like that. But it's important. It's very relevant now, because if we don't do it now, years down the line, when AI becomes more and more bigger as a topic of conversation, how are we going to address those challenges at that time, right? So it's almost like you are setting the strategy without thinking of experience, but then you're not measuring experience, but then you hear your experience from your consumer and you're like, oh no, something's not working in this cycle. So that's the second piece. And then we get to the third piece, which is personalization, which we have already talked about. Hyper-personalization has been talked about. So obviously there are silos in that, and that stems from the last two things I've talked about. Because there are data silos, because there are channel-level silos and functional-level silos, there will be gaps in data. There is inaccurate data. There is data that is incomplete. And we can't be a personalized channel or personalized system, actually, for our consumers if we're not fixing those things. So maybe if we start thinking at that level, there will be certain changes from a personalization perspective. But what does that mean in the near term? And what does that mean for us in the longer term, right? So near term, there are all these great AI tools that are now coming up that can help with personalization, next best action, taking all the data, stitching it together, giving us what we want, right? How are we measuring that? How are we optimizing that? And how are we planning for the future? And in the long term, when we start seeing agentic being more taking over, making that action versus just recommending that action, how are we going to measure that? How will we understand that we are actually making a positive impact and a positive CX experience for our consumers, and not just creating another thing to measure, another thing to do, another project, right? How is this impacting our goal of getting the consumers what they exactly need? So I will leave you with that. That is essentially all I had for you today. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hello. Do you personally sit on an enterprise level?
Yes.
I think it's helpful because what we've noticed when it comes to this is that the franchises are so disconnected, and by the time that they get to us, like you said, they're already so far down path that it's hard to readjust the plan. So I think that, how many people are on your team?
About 20, and we cover all the enterprise, and then we go down at the brand level.
So do you feel like the resources are swapped? Like you would need more resources at the brand and enterprise level to have that connectivity, but yet the funding traditionally gets passed to the product marketing side?
I think it's a conversation about upskilling, and it's a conversation that we continuously need to have. I think there's this idea that whether it stems from however your organization is set up, whether it's a conversation about from a brand marketing or marketer's perspective, or people like us that are supporting functions that are really trying to bring that impact to life, there's a necessity for all of us to upskill what the traditional way of marketing has been. And we've talked about this, right? It's been 20 years, it's omni-channel, we're still talking about it like it's something new. and where we want to go, right? Someone had mentioned alpha channel earlier, which I thought was really, which I thought was really very, very interesting as a concept, because I just didn't have a word for it, but I knew we're heading somewhere else and we're still working on omnichannel, right? So it's about, you can figure out how to budget for your resources, and you can figure out how many people you need per team. What you really need to do is at an organizational, at an enterprise level, think through what you need as an organization to get there, and then figure out what you have as a team, what you need to upscale, and what you need to procure, essentially. I don't know if that answers your question.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, I'm gonna double down. So my next question is that I really connected when it said basically every touch point has its own channel, right? So one of the things that we're really great at is just getting the shiny object, getting the tech. Where would you say, if you had to pick one, so that's the challenge, where would be the master repository for people to have that self-serve content? Would it be a tech that is brought in that you have to train the HCPs because it does have the bells and whistles? Or would you do the tried and true website or see other?
I have a very interesting answer for this. I don't believe it's one size fit all. I don't think and I think this is where I get like a data nerd and a dork, super excited about when we talk about AI coming in, because I think AI would be able to do that. I think it needs to be personalized, right? We are talking about personalized. You can't just have a website and expect all your HCPs in one segment to go to the website, no matter how well your segmentation is defined, right? It has to get at an individual level where an HCP is great, you're using a website for that HCP because you know they use it. That's their traditional mindset of use. But there might be other technological channels to use, like an app for another one, because that just works better for that age group of HCP or whatever demographic that HCP fits in. So I don't think it's one size fit all, but that being said, I'm also not an advocate for all channels everywhere all the time. It's not realistic. It's the effective channel for that specific HCP that you know will make an impact. So you might be running on all channels, but you're not running on all channels for all HCPs. You're being strategic. So that's how I vision it, and that's why I get excited about AI, because I think all the different services that are coming to us at this point can help us get to that, which I hope we will someday.
Wonderful. Any additional questions? Yes.
Hi, great presentation, Saba.
Thank you.
You mentioned measurement and optimization. So when it comes to measurement and optimization of your company's omni-channel efforts, where do you think the responsibility for that should lie? Should that stay with the marketing teams, or would you recommend having an independent watchdog or someone who does that?
Well, thank you for taking my day-to-day life and bringing it here when I'm coming here to leave my day-to-day life for a couple days. But it's a very interesting conversation, right? And it's a very interesting question. We, as AstraZeneca, are at a point where we keep evolving it and testing it, and we're tweaking it, and we're like, no, not working, let's move it. So we're at a point of just like trying to figure out what's clicking. We're not quite there yet, we're figuring it out. But as we're figuring it out, there's obviously, depending on the matrix of your organization, plays a huge role, right? And there's a lot of like roles and responsibility discussions and conversations that needs to be had. But when you think about measurement and Omni, I don't believe it happens in silos, right? I think silos is what brings us to this conversation, what's causing the issues. So I think no one team can truly own it. It has to be a combined team effort of certain people, right? It has to come from Omnichannel, it has to come from INA, it has to come from Salesforce, like, and our reporting teams. Like, there's just a lot of people should come together, form a little committee, and own reporting and optimizing versus brands owning it in silos or Omnichannel owning it in silos, no matter how much we are at the enterprise level. That's my personal vision. We will see where we get.
Thank you.
For Saba before we break for lunch? No? All right. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Saba.
Thank you.